Everyone, this feels like a good time to kick off Flourish our evening. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Flourish Book Club. We're so happy you've joined us tonight. This is absolutely one of my favorite things about Flourish is that women from all over can gather from the comfort of their home while connecting over a shared interest. Tonight isn't meant to feel like a webinar, it's meant to feel like a conversation. So please jump in the chat throughout the evening because you're going to help shape where we go. Before we get started, I also like to thank our dues paying alumni. Your support makes Flourish events like these possible and allow us to continue creating meaningful opportunities for Kappas to connect, learn, and grow. Now let's see where everyone is joining us from tonight. I see we got a wide spread. We have someone down here in Texas. Welcome. Who is this? Hi, Sheila in Sugarland. See somebody out on the West Coast, Carol in California, Moore Park. I also see Barb in Denver. Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. Celeste in Jacksonville, Illinois. I see Alex in Omaha. I see Tiffany in Medina. Welcome. Robin in Hinsdale. Welcome. Katie in Reston. Hello. We have a Catherine in Boston. We have a Jean in New York. My goodness, we're just all over this evening. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Never gets old seeing our sisterhood gather from coast to coast. Now, before we introduce Joan, I want to share one of my favorite questions from registration because I think it tells us a little bit of who's in book club tonight. We asked if you were in a mystery novel, what role would you play? We had 14% who think that they're the bride with a secret, 6% who think they're the suspicious ex, 42% who are the loyal best friend, and 38% who think that they're the detective who solves it all. I have to say, results make me smile. The fact that our biggest group is the loyal best friend feels incredibly Kappa. Of course, we show up for our friends first. And I have to admit, I'm relieved to see only 6% identified as a suspicious ex. Although, with nearly 40% of you choosing the detective who solves it all, I have a feeling Joan is talking to a room full of readers who pay attention to every clue. Before we get to introducing Joan, I want to do something a little different. When you registered, so many of you submitted thoughtful questions. So rather than following a completely scripted interview tonight, we're going to let you guide the conversation. So we want to know, what are you guys most curious about to learn tonight? So just drop in the chat your choice. A, how Joan writes. B, becoming an author. C, creating memorable characters. And D, the inspiration behind a killer wedding. So you just have to drop which letter you want to listen to and learn from first, and that will decide what our topic is that we're going to start with this evening. It looks like there's a really big choice for, we're going to go with D, the inspiration behind a killer wedding. That's a high amount. I can't even see it because people are still answering D. We have a 70%. So, Joan, we'll start there in a second. Don't worry, we'll work in any of the other questions our audience submitted as we go. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce tonight's host. Joan O'Leary is a sister from San Diego who holds a Bachelor's of Art in English with an emphasis in creative writing from the University of San Diego. She spent many years working in the entertainment industry, beginning as an NBC Universal page and most recently serving as a producer for The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon. A Killer Wedding is her debut novel, and we're thrilled she's spending the evening with us. Welcome, Joan.
Thank you so much, Sophie, and thank you, Kappa Sisters, for having me. I've been so excited to join this special book club and cannot wait to answer all your burning questions about A Killer Wedding. But thank you all so much for reading and joining from all over the country. It's still surreal to me that my book has made it to all these different corners of the earth. So I'm very excited.
Yes, so are we. So, I mean, we saw the results. I think people want to start with the conversation of the inspiration behind a killer wedding. So, I have a few questions from registration. And the first
Great.
one being, I had a feeling, obviously, this won't be popular because everybody loves hearing the story behind the story. So, can you take us back to the beginning and where the idea for a killer wedding came from?
Definitely. So it's kind of a funny story. I was sharing a little bit with Sophie before we started the call, but this is a killer wedding. I have it right next to me. My baby was born kind of out of, it was my COVID project, if I'm being completely honest. While everyone was making sourdough bread and kind of stuck at home, the Tonight Show, where I used to work as a producer, was dark. We were all kind of quarantined and waiting to see when it would be safe to come back to the studio. And I had always wanted to try my hand at writing a novel. And I thought, well, I'm never if I'm never going to have more time than I have right now, which is uninterrupted time, living at my parents' house in Charleston, South Carolina, not knowing when I'm going to be able to go back to work in New York City. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna try writing this book. And the piece of advice that most, aspiring writers get is to kind of write what you know. So think about what kind of inspiration or things you have going on in your life at that time. And for me, I was planning a destination wedding in Ireland that was very obviously going to be postponed or canceled because of the ongoing pandemic. So I'm like, well, I have this Pinterest board and all of these ideas for a wedding, and I have time to finally try my hand at writing a book. So why don't I just kind of see what happens? And um, A Killer Wedding was born. And it became, funny and murderous and kind of all sorts of different things like books do when you kind of put pen to paper and start figuring out who these characters are and how they relate to each other. So I'm happy to report that when I did finally have my wedding in Ireland years later, there were no murders and nothing of that nature happened. That was all just, born out of my own imagination during that time.
I'm so happy to hear that. I was when you started that you were having a wedding in a similar location, I was a little
Yeah.
nervous, but I figured it
Everyone
was
usually is. They're like, wait a minute, what happened to your wedding? But no murders. It was beautiful. And it was not nearly as crazy and over the top as Jane and Graham's wedding was. It's very fun to write about a wedding because you can have no budget and no limitations. And as you all probably know, I really let that run away with me.
so at what point did you realize that this was the novel that you wanted to write? I know you mentioned it was the pandemic, so it was
Yeah.
time to start writing, but how did you know that this was the one you wanted to write, I guess?
So I ended up just kind of getting like kind of a feverish dream outline draft of this book written during COVID. And then I went back to work. I put it in a drawer, which is another piece of advice writers usually get is to write something and then put it away for a couple of weeks, a couple months, let it kind of sit, think about it in the back of your mind. So I was lucky to go back to work at The Tonight Show, a job that I loved where I was a creative producer and I supported the writing team. So I wasn't a credited writer on the show, but my job was to work with the writers who were, writing them jokes and the bits for the Tonight Show and help them bring their bits to life. So it was a really creative job where I did get to, use my skills as a storyteller to kind of help, put the show together. So I went back and I did that and I kind of tinkered with my book on the side. And then I think it was 6 or 8 months later, the Hollywood writer's strike happened and the show was shut down again. So this is really a book that was born out of a lot of career, I don't know what setbacks for me, I guess you'd call it, because I just was starting my career in that industry at a time where there was a lot of turbulence from COVID and then to the writer's strike. So I was like, well, I guess I'm taking this book out of the drawer again. I have all this time. We're not sure how long the strike is going to go on for, how long the show will be dark. And it was at that time that I really kind of thought I might have something here. This is really, could have legs, and I'm going to give it my all and see if I can come up with a second draft that's a little stronger, a little more fully formed. And I was able to do that and I sent it out to literary agents right before I went back to work again and ended up connecting with my now agent, Elizabeth. I think it was the first week I was back after the writer's strike. So serendipitous timing.
Oh my goodness, that's crazy. Did you always figure that you would be a thriller mystery writer? Was that always your plan for the book?
So I always wanted to be a writer. I wrote murder mysteries for my high school when I was back in high school for fundraisers. I've always been an avid murder mystery reader. I started with Nancy Drew when I was a girl, and then graduated to Agatha Christie, and I've always loved the mystery greats, those writers. So when I did set out to write a novel, that was the genre that I was most drawn to because that's what I read the most. I love Lucy Foley. I don't know if any of you guys have read her books. But yeah, I was definitely leaning in that direction. I did think for my career that I wanted to work as a TV writer, which is how I ended up working at The Tonight Show. My first job as an assistant there, I was the writer's assistant. So I thought this is what I want to do. I want to write jokes. I want to, be in that room. And one of the great things you learn throughout life, I feel like we've all probably had similar experiences, is sometimes the things you think you want to do aren't exactly all that they seem or what you end up wanting to do. So I ended up finding that a better path for me in TV was the production path, but I still had my passion for writing on the side. And so I kind of did that on my own time as a passion project or a COVID project, an out of work project. And I just feel so lucky that, it ended up making it out onto the shelves.
Well, I'm happy too because thank you. I loved it. So, and we wouldn't be here today if we didn't have it. So,
It's true.
once you had the idea for A Killer Wedding, what did the writing process actually look like for you? I know you've
Yeah.
mentioned that it was during while you were working, but there are some pockets probably where it sounds like that you were not in the office due to
Yeah.
other situations.
Due to life circumstances, it was a roller coaster that we were all on for a while there. Yeah, so I think that the first draft that I set out to write, I would kind of just whenever I felt like inspired to do it. I'm definitely a type A personality, so I, would set like 2 hours aside a day that I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna try and write for these full 2 hours. But that's only possible when you're not really working a full-time job, obviously. So, I was in a way lucky to have that COVID time to really get a draft done. But when I went back to work and I'm still working on this book for probably at least another year and a half after COVID was over, I think it was 5 years total of working on this book from like conception to publication, which is like a long time. I really just held myself to the 15-minute a day rule because that's all I could kind of wrap my head around when I was working these crazy hours at this other demanding job that I also really wanted to give my all to and really enjoyed. And so I always give that advice to aspiring writers too. It's, some of your favorite books, the best novels you've ever read were written on like napkins and in spare 15 minutes and 20-minute pockets of time. Not everybody has uninterrupted hours of the day to bang out an entire book. And Rome certainly wasn't built in a day, and neither were most of your favorite books. So I feel like it was just a labor of love and like plucky stick to itiveness for many years.
It sounds like it. I
Yeah,
can't believe that you had COVID and the writer's strike. That's just a double whammy, but it gave us A Killer Wedding. So
lemonade out of lemons. Honestly, I can say that now. So that feels really good.
yes. So obviously, as we were going through the registration questions, we noticed that a lot of everybody's questions that they wrote in for the book club fell into some common themes. And we went through the first one being what was the inspiration behind A Killer Wedding. So we'd love to touch on one of the other ones that I think we should choose one of the ones that was the second highest vote, which I believe was becoming an author.
Yeah.
So we had questions about your journey. And so, when did you first realize writing was something you wanted to pursue professionally?
That's a really good question. Because I think I always wanted to be a storyteller. That was always like I was a theater kid. I loved reading. I kind of always gravitated towards that path. I think what took me a while was finding the exact medium that fit my strengths and my voice. Uh, and that was, part of a great part of my journey that I wouldn't kind of I don't wish it happened any other way other than trying a few different paths and kind of ending up where I did as an author. But it certainly, I think if you'd asked me at 12, I probably would have been like, I want to write plays for Broadway or musicals. And then if you asked me in college, I would have said, like, I want to work on, Sex in the City. I want to be in a writer's room in New York. And then, if you ask me now, I'm like, this is the dream job. I love being at my computer with my cup of coffee, coming up with really interesting and creative murder mysteries. But I think I got there not necessarily in a linear path, and I tried a lot of different ways of writing before I found that maybe being an author would be the best plan for me. I actually wrote a couple of screenplays that I tried to get I don't know, sold or produced when I was working in TV. And that was just a really frustrating path. It's just very hard to get movies made or any, especially if you don't have a ton of powerful Hollywood connections, which I didn't at the time. And so I thought, if I try writing this book, I still get to be a storyteller. And even if nobody wants to buy it, I mean, I could put it on Amazon myself and people could read it. I could kind of DIY my own publishing journey. So I always had that in the back of my head when I was writing it, that at least I could maybe get my work out there some way through the medium of writing a novel. So that was another kind of way that I ended up going that route.
What surprised you the most about publishing your first novel then? I feel like that kind of is a great.
Getting published at all. That was very surprising. Um, I feel like, I felt like incredibly like an out of body experience when I did connect with my editor who at William Morrow, who really loved A Killer Wedding and wanted to bring it to the bookshelves near you or across the country. That was, yeah, a surreal phone call to get. I still remember getting it. I was in one of those silent pods at work. I don't know if any of you have those, where you're supposed to go in to take like private meetings or calls, and I screamed, but no one could hear me because it was like one of those soundproof pods.
That's amazing. So when you were beginning A Killer Wedding, did the characters or the plot come first for you?
Another great question. I think um, I think the characters came first because I thought that like the wedding cast is so ripe with awesome characters because you kind of have those dynamics built out for you, right? You've got the mother of the bride, you've got the bride and groom, you've got the best man, all of those kinds of vessels, if you will, that you can build a character out of. And so I think I kind of started sketching out what those people might look like. And Gloria was obviously a really fun one to write. I've always loved, she was partially inspired by Estee Lauder, who was one of the first huge female founders in the beauty industry, and then partially inspired by Miranda Priestley from The Devil Wears Prada, who's one of my favorite characters of all time. So I really wanted to create kind of a interesting gray area hero, anti-hero, villainess, and hopefully I accomplished that with Gloria. So she definitely kind of sticks out as the starting point of what spiraled into the crazy killer wedding.
Oh, I love that Gloria is based off of Miranda Priestley. That totally makes sense now reflecting back.
Yeah.
Um, so were there any characters that took you the longest to figure out?
Yes, I feel like the mother of the groom, Clementine, um, changed shapes so many times throughout my revisions. So I kind of said earlier, I spent 5 years working on A Killer Wedding, draft after draft, and then when I signed with my agent, we edited it even more, and then with my editor, we, also edited it. So what I kind of started with back in those COVID days to what ended up in a book form in front of us is completely different. And Clementine is one of those characters who changed so much. But I love where she ended up kind of as this, free spirit, a little like kooky, with her own kind of rich backstory and history as to why, she might be the way that she is. But she started out, I would say, much more one-dimensional. So I'm happy where she ended up and was worth the many painful revisions that I had to do to get her to that point.
Were there any characters in the book that you originally had that didn't make it then, if that is possible?
I had a bigger, I had a character who was the maid of honor. And she just kind of ended up there were a lot of characters in the killer wedding. I will be honest, it's a lot a lot of different people to follow and paths, and so I think she ended up being one of the weaker links, my team thought, and that was helping publish the book. And they thought we could probably do with one less character because there's a lot going on here already, which is fair. And parts of her kind of ended up morphing into what became the character Raquel, who was one of the bridesmaids, who ends up having like a minor role in the mystery. So she didn't completely disappear, but she got chopped down quite a bit. Sometimes you have to do that. The saying like "kill your darlings" or whatever. I think that's where it comes from.
Okay, I have one more question before we're gonna start to open the floor and get some audience questions. Looking back now, is there anything about writing A Killer Wedding that you would do differently?
Yes, definitely. I've learned so much from writing my first novel. and I'm very happy to share that I am writing a second novel that is coming out next summer, which is so exciting.
Yay!
Um, but one thing that I would do differently for sure is start with an outline. Was saying how I just kind of was freewheeling, enjoying some creative writing project during COVID, not thinking that this was ever going to be a real actual book. And that created problems for me down the line because I didn't have an outline to go off of. And this is very complicated mystery. I kind of wrote myself into some crazy situations, as I'm sure you guys remember reading about. And that's a little hard to like edit and trim back and make sure you've dotted all your T's and or dot all your I's and crossed all your T's when you don't have a roadmap to go off of. So when I started writing my second book, I was like, I need to have a short outline that kind of chapter by chapter goes through all the clues that I'm seeding and when the reveals are happening and when we're learning things about certain characters. And that just made the whole process so much easier. I was like, I wish I did this starting out, but you live and you learn, as I say.
I've never thought about that. I'm sure it's like how when people watch shows or read other books and it's like, well, this never got tied up into a bow. So that would definitely be helpful to do for yourself because I'm sure writing it, you're going to forget loads of things while you're doing
Mystery
it.
specifically, yeah, is like, and we have such shrewd readers, and they shouldn't let you get away with anything, and they don't. But I definitely wanted to make sure with my second one that I had a really solid map that I could reference to make sure that we were getting all those great payoffs in the end when you're putting the clues together and solving the mystery instead of me and my editor having to go back like 100 times, like, wait a minute, did we ever finish that or whatever happened to this clue that we mentioned in chapter 3, which we spent a lot of months doing. And to her credit, I think she really made the manuscript much tighter than I could have on my own.
That's amazing. That's like your own like case file, if you will.
Exactly. Like
Okay,
a real
yay.
case.
Well, thank you for answering those. I'm gonna now open the floor a little bit to hear what people are thinking about a killer wedding. We just want to get everybody kind of started towards what they're gonna ask later. So we just wanted to hear without any spoilers what you would describe a killer wedding in one word. Just based off of your own reading and what you remember from while you were reading and just getting to know Joan, how you would describe a killer wedding. So just drop in the chat and then we can discuss further and go into our question and answers. I mean, I was definitely thinking about twisty when I was reading it. That would be
That's a
my
huge
word.
compliment.
I'm sh-
I
Wait,
love
yay, I'm so happy I get
it.
fun. Yes. Fun is
I
a
love
great way. I
that.
was having lots of fun when I was reading and felt like I was on, oh,
Chaotic.
clever, chaotic,
Yeah.
another chaotic,
Oh,
complex.
great crack. I love the Irish.
Yes. Uh, this is more than a word, but yes, Irish. Great. Oh, yes, now I'm fully reading that. Sorry, I couldn't see the chat earlier. Multiple complexes,
Yeah.
definitely. Oh my goodness, guys, these are all fabulous words to describe. So, do any of these stand out to you, Joan,
I mean, I love
specifically?
all of them and identify with all of them. I think that I especially love, obviously, fun because I did write this book as a book that I would want to read to enjoy just on a vacation or, after a long day, curl up and kind of escape into a twisty, fun, chaotic, complex, to use some of the words, world where I could kind of forget whatever was happening in normal life and become a glamorous detective in a foreign locale. So I'm really glad that it resonated with everybody.
No, it was such a fun read. I had it on my Kindle and I would read it while I was doing my walking pad. Like I
Oh,
would
perfect.
hold my
Yeah.
Kindle instead while I was walking because I couldn't put it down.
Music to my ears, honestly. I'm gonna that keeps me going. No, I mean, and there's so many books that have done that for me. And so to be able to put something out that maybe is that for someone else is kind of all you can ever ask for as an author. Because sometimes you just need a little escapism.
Definitely. So I know we've talked a lot about hearing the story behind the story. And so I think it's a good time to ask a good question about the characters. So if you guys want to drop in the chat, what character stayed with you the most from a killer wedding? Like Which one do you guys think about the most? Who is your favorite? I feel like there's going to be a variety of answers. I was thinking about this today when I was doing it, and I definitely think Clementine was the one that stayed with me the most. Christine, yes, Christine definitely too. Joan, are there any of the characters that are your favorite?
Um, it's like trying to pick your favorite child, right? You know, you're not
Yeah.
supposed to. But there's
Gloria.
some
Gloria
I
is a good
really,
one
yeah,
too.
Gloria for sure. There were some that I really loved writing or like kind of being in that point of view headspace more than others. Some I found more challenging. But Gloria was definitely one that I loved being kind of in her head. And I really loved being in Lyle's head too, the wife of the brother of the groom.
Mhm.
I found her chapters really fun to write and kind of imagine things from her perspective. But obviously, our girl Christine, you know, couldn't have done it without her. And the name Christine actually was I named her Christine kind of after Agatha Christie. That was the inspiration behind her name, which is kind of a fun fact to share. And then obviously, yeah, Jane. I'm glad Jane made it on the board. She's one of the more interesting characters and hopefully one of the surprising ones in the end. But I definitely have like I guess a chaotic brain because the word chaos came up a lot. So it was really fun for me to get to inhabit all these different perspectives and kind of like switch gears throughout the writing process. I think that kept me engaged in the story and kind of thinking at it from lots of different angles by trying to imagine this crazy situation from all these different types of people's perspective.
That's so amazing that you can think with that many people and all their different thoughts. I
Jumbled in
can
my
imagine,
brain.
yeah, like just jumbled during that. I can't imagine writing it too. Well, it sounds like everybody loved
Yeah,
Christine, Jane, and Gloria. Somebody even did all three in their answer. So that is
very
awesome.
love the
So
women, right? We
I
love a
thought it,
strong, interesting, independent woman.
yeah.
Um,
I thought it'd be fun to do a little lightning round right before we start our open Q&A for everyone. So if you're down for a Jane, not Jane, sorry, I'm thinking about Jane, Joan.
Pretty, yeah.
I have some fun little questions. So do you do coffee or tea while you're writing?
Ooh, coffee. I'm a huge coffee drinker.
Are you a morning or night writer?
I am a morning writer. I actually get up quite early to write. My best writing hours are like 5:30, 6 and 6:30 and 7:30. And then I'm pretty much done.
Who is your favorite mystery author?
Oh my gosh, I can't pick one, but I do really love Lucy Foley. I always look, I think someone in the chat said they're also a fan of hers. And Ruth Ware and Lisa Jewell and obviously Agatha Christie and Caroline Keene and all the ones from my growing up too. But sorry, that was like seven.
No, we're all readers, so I love hearing all those names. I think you answered this earlier, but I could be wrong. Who was the hardest character for you to write?
Mm. Clementine was definitely one of the harder ones, which we touched on earlier. But there were a few that were challenging. I mean, honestly, writing from the perspective of Seamus and Mac, kind of getting into like the gangster mentality, was not something as probably as obvious that came naturally to me. So that took a little bit of really kind of research and putting myself in someone else's shoes. So that was also a challenging couple of characters to write.
My goodness, I can't even imagine having to do that research
Yeah.
for it. What was the last book you couldn't put down?
You know what? This is actually interesting. I do love to read nonfiction a lot too. I love a mystery. Don't get me wrong, and a good beach read. But I really love when I'm writing one of those types of books. I like to read things that are really different, just so I feel like I'm kind of, you know, sometimes you don't want to lose your own voice by reading how someone else might be writing their books or structuring it. So I try to read something really different. And right now I'm reading London Falling by Patrick Radden Keefe. And he wrote a couple of other narrative nonfiction books that are great. They kind of read like thrillers, if I'm being completely honest, which is probably why I like him as a writer. But it's true stories about different sort of historical situations or political events. And this one's really good, London Falling. But he also wrote Say Nothing, which is a book about the IRA and the issues that were plaguing Ireland during the 80s and 90s, which they think they just made into a TV series that some of you guys might have seen. But I'm really enjoying his work right now.
You had somebody comment saying that they love him too. So you've got a
Oh,
fellow.
really? Yeah. I mean,
Yes.
he's amazing.
And then last question before the open Q&A is what is one piece of writing advice that you would give?
um, I feel like I could do a whole nother chat just on writing advice because I feel like I've gotten such great advice over the years. But I think it would just be you can't edit a blank page. And I think a lot of writers or people who aspire to write a book or anything, they cut themselves off when they feel like the first paragraph didn't come out exactly the way they wanted it, or they've written a chapter and they're like, I don't even know where to go from here. And I think those are the moments where you really have to push through, allow yourself to write something that you think is terrible or bad, because that's where everybody starts. And you can always go back and edit it and get feedback and change and nothing is nothing is written in stone, quite literally. It's typed on your computer and can be deleted and redone, but you can't edit a blank page. So write the draft, finish it, be proud of yourself for putting words on the page, and just know that you can make it better and better and better.
I love
Mhm.
that. Thank you for answering our little lightning round.
Of
It's fun to
course.
learn like what type of writer different authors are. So we saved plenty of time for everybody's questions. If you guys want to drop in the chat and submit them, we will start asking those questions first. So our
Great.
first question is, how did you keep yourself organized, particularly when making changes to characters in the process of writing?
That's a good question. It kind of goes back to the outlining thing that I touched on a little earlier. So I did end up having to create an outline for A Killer Wedding during the editing process because it just did become too complex and chaotic, to use some of our own words, for me to kind of hold in my head, and needed to kind of see that it all kind of written out on the page so I could figure out where the gaps were and where I needed to do extra work. So the outline really did help me keep me organized. And when I say outline, it's just kind of like chapter one and then a few bullet points about what happens, like what are like the big pieces of information that are being disseminated in that chapter, and what's happening, what's the action, what the reveals are. Um, and then the characters are a little bit more tricky because I think this is one of the spooky parts of writing is the characters kind of show you who they are on the page. You might set out to write a certain type of character and then they do things while you're writing that kind of surprise you. I don't know any other way of describing it other than they kind of reveal themselves. So that part takes a little bit of time and like kind of getting the whole story out and then going back and like chiseling away at the parts that they might have started one way, but in the end they end up being a good person or a bad person, or more than likely a combination of both. So that is a little bit less by the book, and I guess more sense of feel, if that's helpful. I don't know.
Would you consider a spin-off story using one of your characters from A Killer Wedding?
You know what? I've been asked that before, and I think at some point I would be. I think after A Killer Wedding came out last year, I was like, I need a break from these crazy characters. I need a new cast of people. I've been working with these guys for like 5 years, and it was been a great 5 years, but we need to let it rest. But I do think, in the future, I would come back to maybe doing a spinoff. Maybe I think I said earlier, like Lyle is a character I really enjoyed writing from her perspective, and so I could see myself maybe doing something with her down the line.
Oh, that would be so fun. But I get it. 5 years with the same
Yeah,
characters can definitely be
we need some
needing
time
a
to
break.
settle.
Anne said that she loved your book and can't wait for the next one. Do you see yourself in Christine or any of the characters that you wrote?
I think that probably parts of me in all of them, if I'm being completely honest. I don't think I'm as evil as some of the characters that I wrote were, but I think that they all start with like a core nugget or some piece of you, in some way, some kind of thread from your life or someone you knew or something you experienced, and then they kind of take on a whole life of their own once you start writing their story. But I think I do see, a little bit of myself in Christine in the sense of like, starting this job and really wanting to like make it to the top and kind of having a revelation throughout the book of like maybe, her path is different than she might have thought it was when she started, which I think is something that happens to a lot of us in our, early 20s and when we're just starting to think of what kind of career or life we might want to lead.
Course.
Mhm.
Carol mentioned that she loved the audio. Do you select the readers? She felt that they were spot on.
I'm so glad to hear that. I did get to listen in on the auditions, and I did end up pick. It ended up being kind of lucky because I didn't have final say on who got to do the audio recording, but I did get to weigh in. And the woman that I thought was the strongest narrator did get selected ultimately by the publisher, which I was so happy about. And I did think she did a really, really great job. I would love to have in the future, a full cast narrate. So it would have been like helpful to I think to have some male voice actors to do the male parts just so it's easier for readers to follow. But I mean, what a challenge I gave her with all of these characters, and she really hit it out of the park.
That's awesome. Tiffany loved your book. Is the new book going to be a thriller as well? She cannot wait.
I'm so excited. It is a thriller. It's called Bad Best Friend, and it's about four best friends from college who go on a maybe Kappa sisters, who knows, who go on a trip to Lake Como together to celebrate their 30th birthday. And there is kind of a secret from their past that bubbles up to the surface. And there ends up being a dead body in the water, and we're trying to figure out who it is and how it all unraveled. So it's a story. It's definitely a mystery thriller in an exotic location. It takes a lot of the same themes from A Killer Wedding, but this one kind of is musing on friendship and hitting life milestones and marriage, and it's a little bit more, I guess I would say, like in the vein of Big Little Lies, than quite like a straightforward whodunit. But I'm really excited to get that into everyone's hands, hopefully May or June of next year.
Oh my goodness.
Mhm.
Is any of it have you been to Lake Como with your best friends? None
Yes,
of
yes. I haven't been with my best, well, I guess my husband is one of my best friends. But I did end up, we were there for last summer in Italy for a couple of months because he was working on a project that was based out there. He's a lawyer and he was working out of the Milan office there. And so we ended up spending 3 months in Italy. And that's where I kind of came up with the idea for the book and wrote it from Italy, which honestly, best 3 months of my life. I was like, it's like, did I
It
really get to do
sounds
that?
like
That was so fun.
an awesome gig. You get to go to these wonderful places and then they give
Yeah.
you wonderful thoughts for your books. Like, sign me
Yeah.
up. How was Gloria that close to Jane, i.e. witness protection passport?
My gosh, you're really testing my knowledge here. Um, I don't know if I fully understand that question. Witness protection. Like, how did she end up in witness protection in the end? Is
I
that,
I
yeah.
maybe so. And maybe Catherine, if you want to expand on your question, you can unmute yourself or retype it. I know I see you. I think it's in the
Yeah,
bottom left.
yeah,
There
I
you go.
got it. I just
Okay.
couldn't see it right away. My question kind of goes back to when they played the chess game and the
Oh, okay.
Gloria knew that Jane let her win. And
Yes,
so I think she saw some of Jane maybe in her character. She was strong,
definitely. Yeah.
but you still kind of wonder why she felt like to help her. Why?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think that's kind of in my mind at least, she saw kind of a little bit of herself and Jane, kind of to use your own words. And I think she was like giving this woman another chance. It's kind of like giving my younger self another chance at life, and maybe giving, she's put herself in this situation that's not great. She's made some big mistakes, but I am in a position of power where I can kind of, I'm the chess, controlling the chessboard, and I can move these pieces around and do some things for her. And maybe she'll make better choices in the future. Maybe she'll, take this get out of jail free card essentially and use it for good. And that kind of made Gloria feel better. I think that was what I was going for.
Thank you, Catherine, for
Mhm.
Banning. That
That
was a
is a
much
great
better
question.
way of asking than how I did, so I appreciate that. How did you come up with the chapter ideas titled after the characters?
Yes, that I guess that's like born out of the idea of like the shifting perspective, right? And kind of seeing what's unfolding from all the different kind of people at the party. And I think it kind of honestly helped me move the story along because by switching to a different character's perspective, I kind of had to be like, okay, so now we're in the wedding planner's perspective. What's he doing right now? What's happening to like, get ready for the wedding? And then, oh, well, what's the mother of the groom doing? What would she be doing during this time on this day? And it helped me kind of figure out yeah, exactly how to keep the story moving forward and coming up with interesting scenes to put these people in.
Did you happen to hide any Easter eggs or inside jokes that readers might have missed?
So one thing that I did do, which is kind of funny, very Taylor Swift of me, but is for Easter eggs, I used a lot of my friends and family's names as kind of the random side characters. So I think in like one of the invitations, I said like the chef is named Lauren Sykes, and that's one of my best friends. And I think I have some of my Kappa sisters from University of San Diego's names are in here too. And so it was really fun for me when my friends were all reading the book for the first time. They would text me, they're like, oh my gosh, my name's on page 76 or whatever. So I loved being able to do that. And I will definitely do that with all my books going forward. So that was kind of a fun little game I played.
So sweet. That is so Taylor Swift coded. I'm obsessed with that. Katie says that she just came back from a wedding in Dingle, Ireland, and it was gorgeous. So, and she
Yeah.
wants to know, did you use any of your own wedding experiences on Ireland into the book?
So my wedding wasn't quite as over the top as the wedding that I wrote about in A Killer Wedding, but I did take some inspiration from it for sure. Especially the rehearsal dinner, which was in the garden outside the castle. That's my rehearsal dinner was also in a really beautiful garden in Ireland that was like very green and lush, and it was also fall, so it had kind of leaves falling and the lanterns. And I would say out of like all the things from my own wedding that ended up in the book, that's probably the setting that I most was able to parallel the most, I guess.
I feel like that's a win. Besides the location, I'm not sure you would have wanted a lot of what was going
True.
on.
Yeah, you know what? I think I'm very happy with the difference between my wedding and the wedding I wrote
I
about
agree.
so far.
What has it been like watching readers react to your book? Has anything about readers' responses to the book surprised you?
I think it's just been really like the coolest experience of my life, honestly. Getting to meet so many people who've spent time in this wacky world that I created and chose this as the book that they were going to curl up with at night or bring on vacation or give to their sister or their friend. It's just so special and cool, and I'll honestly never be over it. I feel so lucky that happened for me. And I love talking with readers like all of you tonight about the characters that connected with you and the twist that you didn't see coming, or the scenes that really stuck out in your mind. So it's just really fun. I'm trying to think, is there anything that has surprised me? Um, Oh, one thing that I do think is really funny is when some people will be like, "Oh, I knew exactly how the book was going to end." Like that hasn't happened. I'm pretty twisty, so that hasn't happened a lot. But there are a few people who've been like, I knew it like on this page how this was all going to end," and I was like, "Well, I didn't really when I was writing it know how it was going to end," and that's the truth. Like I was kind of like, I don't know where this is going. So I do think it's funny when people like I had it all figured out on page 150, and I was like, "Well, I didn't have it figured out." So you're more impressive than I could ever hope to be.
I was going to ask that if you knew start to finish
Yeah.
what the ending was going to be, or did you just overall know what, I don't even know what the word is. Like, I guess you knew what the plot you wanted it to be, but did you always know the ending? Did you always know the twist you were going to give us?
No, I didn't. I feel like that's like I just kind of started writing it and then the twists would kind of unveil themselves. And then I think towards the end of the book, I was like, I don't how am I gonna wrap this all together? This is crazy. And I kind of had to go back through it a couple times and like pick out different things and try and then it kind of I had like an aha moment and I saw kind of in my mind's eye how this ended and what made sense. And it was such a cool feeling. to like look at this thing that I'd created and see the culmination of it and see kind of what I was even trying to say. I think, I didn't set out with like a exact vision in mind. It kind of morphed into what it became, I guess, like a butterfly metamorphosis. And yeah, so I didn't know, and I do think it's funny when people think, it must they I knew exactly when it was gonna take this turn. I was like, oh my gosh, if only I had known that, I could have saved myself a lot of hours of
I had no idea. You got me. I was up into the minute, like
Yeah,
not
it's the
sure
same
where
with
it was
my
gonna
second
go.
book. I didn't know how that was going to end either. I kind of had to like figure it out on the page. Um, so I guess that's just like my style. But I know there are authors who are like, they start knowing exactly how it's going to end and then they work their way backwards from that. So that sounds like a much better place to write from, if I'm being completely honest.
Was there any part of the book that you were absolutely certain on, or was it truly just it was a wedding in Ireland that you were set on having?
I was set on having like the character of Gloria. Like once she became clear to me, I loved like having her be, a force of good and a force of evil, like playing with that dichotomy of like how can someone be, bad and good, and how would that look in this kind of setting with this kind of family and this kind of situation. And so that was kind of one of the driving forces, I think, for me.
She was such a good character, so that makes sense. We have one more question before we wrap up book club tonight. Christina asked, can you see this as a screenplay?
I would love if it was made into a movie or TV show. I'm biased, obviously, but I think it would be really fun to watch. I think it would lend itself well to like a mini series, kind of where you follow from each episode, like, is how the chapters were like from the different perspectives. So I think it would be fun. Who doesn't want to watch a glamorous wedding in Ireland on TV? I mean, come on, sign me up.
Me too. I hope it happens.
Yeah, me too. Fingers crossed. It's being shopped around, so we'll see.
Congratulations. Thank you for answering. And everybody, thank you for asking questions to Joan. In
Thank you,
true
guys.
book club nature, we thought before we wrap up, we thought it would be fun to do a way to leave each other with one more great recommendation. So, do you have a mystery or a favorite book that you would recommend to another Kappa this evening? It feels like we're at book club. We need to discuss what others are reading or what they suggest to others. So, I don't know, Joan, you shared earlier what you were reading. Is there anything else that you would suggest to our book clubbers tonight?
There's so many. I'm like, I want to suggest maybe another book kind of in the same genre that A Killer Wedding is, maybe a thriller, murder mystery type book. And I did mention Lucy Foley before. So if you did enjoy A Killer Wedding, I think The Guest List is a really great book. It's another kind of murder mystery at a wedding in Ireland. I know, crazy. And I also love The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley as well as another really good, juicy murder mystery.
I have not read that one. I did read the guest list and loved it and felt the same way about it being in similar locations while I was
Yeah,
reading yours. It looks like we have some suggestions. One of Us is Dead by Geneva Rose, which I have read that
Rose
too. It
is
sounds
great too.
excellent.
Yeah.
Forks, Knives, and Spoons. I have not heard of that one, so I need to add this to my TBR. The Women by Kristen Hanna. I loved that one.
Yeah,
The
that was a
Silent
great book.
the Silent Patient by Alex Michelides. That one I love too. Mona's Eyes. You guys have, like, seriously, my list is growing. I need to pull out my Goodreads later so I can add everything to my to be read and continue on with our The Borrowed Life of Frederick Fife.
Yeah,
Yes, Lucy Foley books, her book The Midnight Feast. I've not read that one. The Things We Leave Unfinished.
Becky Yaros. Yeah,
Beartown by Frederick Backman, The Stolen Queen. I just finished The Stolen Queen. Joan, you asked me earlier what I just finished. That's what I finished on
that's
Sunday by
okay.
Fiona Davis, another Kappa. That's what I had just finished. My goodness, guys, these were all such fabulous suggestions. We're like a real deal book club we got going on.
Seriously.
So, Joan, last question for you. So, whether somebody finished A Killer Wedding last week or is planning to start it tomorrow, what's one thing you hope readers take away after closing the final page?
I hope that readers have had a great time at the wedding. I hope that they, enjoyed all the twists and turns, all the crazy characters, and were thoroughly entertained. Because that is definitely why I wrote it. And yeah, so that's what I hope.
Yes, what Katie said. Thank you for inviting us to the wedding. I couldn't agree more. Joan, thank you so much for spending your evening with us. We loved getting the behind the scenes look at a killer wedding and hearing about the journey idea to your finished novel, and especially your second one coming out. How exciting!
So
And
exciting.
she even told us tonight that A Killer Wedding is coming out as a paperback soon. So I know Alex is going to put in the chat where you can find it to get your own copy, but it's shortly coming out in paperback format, which is super exciting.
Yes. Yeah. So it'll be available everywhere. Please share it with your friends and family. And thank you again so much for reading and supporting me. I feel all the Kappa love and loved being able to chat with all of you tonight.
Yes, and thank you to everyone who joined us tonight, whether you came having already solved every clue, which I didn't. I was up to the last page, or you're leaving excited to read the book for the first time. We hope tonight reminds you why Flourish Book Club is so special. It's not just about the books, it's about the conversations and connections that we build together. Before you sign off, in the chat, you'll find ways to find Joan, how to purchase the book, and our upcoming Flourish events, which our next event is with Jennings King, which is Every Picture Has a Story to Tell. Are Yours Safe on August 18th. Carolyn Williams is Feel Good Recipes on August 22nd, 27th. And then we have our next book club in September for the semester by Joe Landu on September 16th. So you're also invited to the Kappa Kappa Gamma Foundation's Historically Speaking series, which is kicking off on August 25th at 8 p.m. And thank you everyone for spending your evening with us. Have a wonderful night, and we'll see you at the next Flourish event. Thank you so much, Joan. This was amazing.
Thank you, Sophie. Thank you, everyone. So fun spending this evening with you, and happy reading. We all have so many new books that we have to go read now, so it's
Thank
great.
you, everyone. Good night.